talking about the medium-term expenditure, which is very crucial for public finance management in Nigeria and in other places. But the essence of this medium-term expenditure framework is to guide against budgetary impropriety in budgeting processes. That means mismanagement in our budgeting processes. But on the other hand, questions have been asked over the years how Nigeria has been managing its MTEF. That means the medium-term expenditure framework. If this term or this MTEF is aimed to streamline budgeting processes in Nigeria, how come much of its gains have not been well established in the Nigerian budgeting system? Also, okay, we have Mr. Eze. Very good day to have you on the show, sir.
Being here, thank you.
All right, so sir, let's get down to the discussion segment. I was trying to give a background analysis of MTEF, but let's have it from you. When we talk about medium-term expenditure framework, what does it connote?
Well, the medium-term expenditure framework is a critical budget and planning tool that tries to bring together policies, plans, and the budget, and of course the laws, so that the budget is informed by high-level national and state policies in every sector. It helps us to plan when we are thinking about the expenditure of tomorrow, maybe 2026. We are thinking of the capital expenditure. We should also be able to think of the recurrent expenditure implications in subsequent years. For instance, if you are building a new school, if in the first year you're able to build the infrastructure, in the second year you may need to equip the school, hire teachers, and bring in students, and other things you may need to run the school. So it helps us to also marry the capital and recurrent components of the budget. It helps us to make budget planning a bit scientific and predictable because we are going to work with data and information that is based on evidence that is credible and also makes for some level of predictability. Since you are working with data and evidence that is scientific, you will know that when you budget, it's not just a budget of wishes, that the resources will be available to implement the budget, capital releases will be done as and when due, and then budget policies in terms of the intentions of policy frameworks will be achieved after the implementation of the budget. So it's a wonderful budget planning and implementation tool if it is properly used. But whether that result has reflected in Nigerian budgeting at both the federal and state level since we introduced the MTEF is a different kettle of fish which we have to analyze and discuss whether we've realized those benefits.
Exactly. We are going to that particular portion of the discussion in that regard. And we also understand that Nigeria embraced medium-term expenditure framework in 2009. And just like you asked, whether these are really reflected in our budgeting process, whether it has really brought the aims and goals that even the government established for themselves, whether we have realized that it's not a different ballgame. But for you, having followed up on MTEF since 2009 to date, how will you describe the Nigerian environment of MTEF? With its challenges, with its aims, with its goal that the government even set for himself?
Well, the Nigerian system has a way of bastardizing what very noble objectives, very noble policies, and then people will begin to question whether these policies hold a magic wand that was expected from the beginning. The MTEF in Nigeria, with utmost respect, especially in the last 10 years, has been a failure because I want to divide the MTEF periodicity into about two periods. From the earlier part of the Obasanjo's days up till 2014, and then from around 2014-15 up till the present day. So we have a scenario where, for instance, the methods, procedures, and evidence that should be used in the preparation of the MTEF is ignored. For instance, let's even look at the time frame. The Fiscal Responsibility Act says that the MTEF should be ready by the end of the second quarter for its endorsement by the Federal Executive Council, and thereafter it should be sent for approval to the National Assembly. We are in the last working day of the month of November, being the 11th month, because Sunday will be the last day in November. Yet the MTEF is not prepared. If it's been prepared, it's at the executive level. It's not been sent to the National Assembly. Stakeholders have not been consulted. So if a document that is supposed to be ready in June, approved in July, for it to guide budget preparation is not ready by November, your guess can be as good as mine. And then, for instance, the parameters of the MTEF is supposed to guide budget formulation. When you use wrong parameters or unduly, optimistic parameters, like each time we say we want to get 2 million barrels a day, when there is no evidence from the last 12 months that we've done more than 1516, if you use it to plan your budget, which comes from the MTEF, that means you are discussing about 500,000 barrels times the budget benchmark price, and the budget's revenue side is dead on arrival. So there are wonderful promises of what the MTEF can do, but it has not delivered. And I'm saying that is the failure rate is much more in the last 10 years compared to the initial period. The initial period we thought was a learning curve, a learning period, and we were expecting that we could move from realizing 35, 40, 50% of the promises and objectives to maybe 60, 70, 80. But instead, we have set ourselves in a reverse gear and motion. So not much is being achieved with the MTEF today.
Exactly. And although the MTEF could be very technical when we are discussing it, so I want us to do something that most of our viewers can really understand, most of the issue within the MTEF parameter and the benchmark that surround it. For instance, one of the key challenges that most analysts and experts like you have fought is that our over-reliance on oil price to determine this MTEF spending and revenue generation is still a big problem for us. And you said something very critical. From 2009 to 2014, it was a learning period for us. So what really happened that we cannot learn and improve on what we have learned from 2009 to 2014, and we are still making the same problem, the same mistake of what we have been learning over and over before?
Fiscal governance is about rules, regulations, laws, and policies. And those rules, regulations, laws, and policies do not drive themselves. They are driven by human beings. So the human element is central in the enforcement of laws and policies. The capacity, competence, zeal, and vision of A in implementing a particular policy will be different from that of B. So if A came before, like during the Konji-Wala days, you could recognize the expertise and the commitment and the zeal to push through those ideas, because more or less people say these are World Bank ideas, and she came from that direction, and so she wanted to prove that it can succeed. But after her, we've not had any minister of that caliber who understood what the issues are, who is even passionate about making sure that these things don't fail but that they succeed. So that is the difference between we are trying and we are hoping to improve, and now we have simply given up. We are not even doing anything at all, because you have to understand the system, be passionate about it, and drive the system as a minister or as a special advisor or in whatever position that the president has placed you to run it. Those who are currently running the system, with utmost respect, I don't think they understand what they're doing. As at November, most ministries, departments, and agencies have not got a single capital release for the 2025 budget. And somebody stays here to talk about macroeconomic indicators. Oh, your Naira is appreciating because I watched that part. Oh, inflation is coming down. Ask yourself, if inflation is 16% as a bureau of statistics, because these are the macroeconomic indicators that will be used to prepare the MTEF and of course the budget. And once you get these macroeconomic indicators wrong, then anything built on them will be wrong. If inflation was still 16%, why is the Monetary Policy Committee still retaining the monetary policy rate at 27? A difference of 11. So something is not adding up. Both those who are running the statistics agency, those who are running monetary policy, because the MTEF is beyond just the budget and fiscal policy. It encompasses planning that involves the monetary policy rate, access to credit, inflation, job creation, economic growth, and then you tie it down to the budget because it understands the complexities. But once you are having people pulling in different directions, fiscal policy is pulling in one direction, monetary policy is pulling another, there's no harmonization between trade and employment policy. So at the end of the day, you simply get what you want. It's a staccato planning process that we are doing. Whether we call it MTEF or we call it whatever, the figures are not adding up.
Exactly. And I'm talking about the aspect of forecasting the macroeconomy aspect of the Nigerian economy. But what would you say is the main issue? Because I've heard people argue that political interference in this kind of technical aspect of the Nigerian economy is the biggest problem. So will you also subscribe to the argument that it is because of the interference of the politicians? Because when you rebase the economy as we have done, when you have an inflation that is lower than 16, or you have a 27% interest rate as it stands today, it means that the economy is going in favorable with the political interference that we have. But what do you make of all this when it comes to MTEF? Because as you rightly pointed out, it doesn't need to be that ambiguity. But what we have today is something far, far different.
Now, the various definitions of the budget include looking at it from the economic planning angle. There are people who look at it from the developmental, human rights perspective, even gender, environmental. And then there are people who say that the budget and all the policies surrounding it is pure politics about the allocation of resources, who gets what, and who suffers the pains or bears the consequences of other people's fiscal and economic misdeeds. So, but in the Nigerian perspective, the Nigerian leadership simply looks at the budget and economic planning as the most raw of politics. They don't understand the need for it to be looked at as purely some level of economics and developmentalism. So if you simply look at budget as purely politics, that's what accounts for ignoring the data that you should use in planning and then substituting the data you have with some form of what will amount to fake data. For instance, today the Bureau of Statistics will tell you that unemployment is less than 5 or 6%, but everybody knows that that is a very fat lie. So when you start planning with this kind of statistics and data, because of political interference, yes, politics drives everything. Politics should drive even the budget, but politics doesn't have to drive the budget against the facts on the ground, against the data that the economics, the statisticians are bringing to say, look, sir, we can't do this. For instance, you came and announced a budget of 54 trillion or 55 trillion, and people were clapping for you. Oh, it's the highest since Nigeria was created or whatever happened. But you're not ready to implement it, or maybe for whatever reason, you did not intend to implement it from the day go, from the word go. So that's why I'm saying politics has to be toned down in fiscal and monetary, trade and developmental policy planning. Otherwise, this is the result we will get.
Exactly. Interesting. Recently, I stumbled across one of your write-up on the health sector budget. And one of the key aspects of an MTEF is about sector ceiling. And we have heard in the past, we're also hearing right now that the federal government is prepared to increase the health sector budgetary. But what do you make of that? Based on what you have said in your write-up about health sector in Nigeria, how we are planning a lower than what is expected when it comes to health sector budget in Nigeria?
No, it is not about what Mr. President or the Minister of Health announces as the health sector budget, just like we discovered this year. Whatever was announced, apart from paying salaries, the bulk of it was not implemented. So I should think about implementability, credibility. What the federal government should tell itself the truth. What is it ready to spend on the health sector? And then the state of health of Nigerians or the health indicators is not going to be improved only by the money put down by the government. I mean, whether it is the federal or state or local government. There are other places from where money can be, we can get money to run the health sector. For instance, the National Health Insurance Program, we were expecting that by now, the compulsory nature of it under the NHI Act should have been enforced. And I'm saying, as a matter of fact, that health insurance premiums that will have been realized will definitely be more than the money that was budgeted by the federal, state, and local governments. So assuming between the federal, state, and local governments are bringing it about 3 or 4 trillion as the health budget we are ready to release, and then health insurance premiums and bringing in another 5 or 6 trillion, you are definitely talking about 10 trillion for the sector. And then there are a number of things that can be done beyond just the budget. So I'm not particularly excited. I feel very discouraged analyzing these sectoral budgets like hell, because those analyses don't make meaning to the people who should do the budget, who should implement it. They don't even understand what they're doing. Forget all the claims of expertise that they do. The test of the expertise is in the implementation. They are not yet ready to change. They belong to the old order. And until they get out of the way, Nigeria is not going to make progress. Why make a budget which you are not releasing money? And unfortunately, all the non-oil sector forecasts, we have overshot them for 2025. All the applications or requests for loan approval that the president sent to the National Assembly, the National Assembly approves this as a matter of being a rubber stamp legislature. It's only maybe the oil sector forecast that we have not realized, which is not so much. So you tell me why Mr. President decides to put that money aside. What are they doing with the money? Maybe convert some of them to the dollars and tell us our foreign reserves is growing. Or maybe put some aside to spend in unbudgeted projects like the Lagos Calabar Coastal Way. Or find a way to put aside some money for the political party to contest elections in 2027. What exactly is happening? Nobody is explaining to Nigerians. Nobody is talking to us. So as far as I'm concerned, it appears to be a waste of time sitting down and drawing up high-level, intellectual and beautiful practicable documents, which nobody will even tell you a thank you for drawing up. This is what we've been doing over the years, but it appears the circle may be closing. There's no need for one to be wasting his time again.
But we won't let you do that. But based on what you have just said right now, FSP, that is physical strategy paper, is very, very key. It's one of the key components in MTEF. But in the Nigerian case, just like you really mentioned, the borrowing plan, the revenue plan, it seems that everything looks a little bit technically confusing for Nigerians. But for you, you understand all this within the 2025 budget and the 2024 budget that is still running as we speak right now, and 2025 budget is nowhere to be found when it comes to implementation. But what do you make of the FSP paper of the government of the day?
We have not, I mean, it's part of them, so they've not released, have they released for 2026, 2028? Not yet to my knowledge. But the ones we had in the past, it will always tell you the beautiful things they want to hear. So I expect the new one to encapsulate the new tax laws that have been approved with the hope that they will get more taxation from Nigerians. But for me, the challenge is not to get more money from Nigerians like we've gotten from the oil subsidy removal. But what exactly do you want to do with the money? In what sectors? After the fuel subsidy removal, have we seen government expenditure increasing except that more money is available for the legislators, more money is available for the executive for them to drive bigger cars, have more constituency votes, and have more money to play around with? Purportedly, states are collecting more money. Where are we seeing the evidence of that? Federal government has more money. Where is the evidence of it? If you are not even doing the basic things like education and health. And the people, their colleagues, we are campaigning the other day asking federal government to release money for basic things like immunization of children and pregnant women. And the government needs to be begged to release the money in late November. And that is the money that should have been available from January. So you ask yourself, all the revenue that has been accruing in 2025, is Mr. President and the Minister of Finance and Budget and Planning, is there any place they are putting this money? Nigerians need to know. If they are spending it without implementing the capital budget, that means they have committed impeachable offenses, and for which Nigerians should question them. You know, we are too docile in this part of the world. These people are playing poker games with us. A huge joke and a huge circus. And if you ask them, they look you straight in the face and tell you what amounts to blatant lies. That money should be in an account that nobody should touch. But if they spent it for any reason, I don't know why the National Assembly exists if not to impeach them.
Exactly. Interesting part of our discussion today. But Mr. Eze, I would like to say that this is a developing issue. As we expect the 2026 budget to come forward so that we can also extray and hear from your expert opinion on it. But thank you so much for coming on the show today, sir.
My pleasure, right.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Mr. Eze Onyekpere, who happens to be the lead director at Center for Social Justice. Quite interesting aspect of the Nigerian economy. MTEF is very, very critical. Although technically, most Nigerians may not grasp what it entails, but kudos to Mr. Eze, who normally make this kind of issues in the ABC form. And that's what we'll be doing on the market report, so we can understand Nigerian budgeting system. Yesterday, we discussed issue around state budget. MTEF is also carried out at the state level. At the federal level, MTEF is also carried out. But we're getting involved on understanding on all this subject matter going forward. And I know by the time 2026 budget is being presented to the National Assembly, definitely will bring someone like Mr. Eze to help us dissect it.